we got the 2017 Victory Magnum. Some of you have asked me, how do you get big touring bikes up off the ground on a lift, and of course find the balance point so the bike isn't leaning too far forward and too far back. So I've had to jack this bike up multiple times because I've been working on it. So today I'm going to show you what jack I use and how to get this thing up in the air. And really it's just because if you've never done it, it can be kind of confusing. But I can show you that the kickstand does still go up and down. I typically keep it down just because, you know, I just kind of know that it's down. So let me show you what we do and yeah, how you can do this at home. Okay, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to actually take this thing off of the jack and get it back on the ground. This bike does not like its kickstand. It's very low. It needs a new spring actually. There we go. So you can see why this thing was sitting on the jack, because that kickstand spring needs to be replaced, but it makes the bike fall over further than it's supposed to. But yeah, it's not gonna fall over. This lift is what I use for everything that I do here in the garage. It comes from Harbor Freight, holds up to 1,500 pounds. But you got these two posts right here that sit under the bike. And for V-twin bikes like this, it works out best because you're sitting the bike on either two things, the motor or the frame. In V-twin cases, it's most likely the frame. But if you have something like a sports bike or something, or like an FTR, you might be sitting it on plastics. So before I put the jack under the bike, it's a good idea to look under here to make sure you're not gonna be pinching any wires like these. For instance, this is a wire, this is a wire. You don't want to put the weight on that wire. You just want to put it on bare metal. And in most cases, you're gonna find a spot to put it right here, right in front of the kickstand, and also right at the end of the frame rail here. The difference with the Victory Magnum is that the oil filter is in the back compared to the Indian Chieftain where the oil filter is in the front. So if you put it too far back, you're gonna put the pressure on the oil filter, and that's the last thing you wanna do. The oil filter is right there at the back. So if you go too far back, you're gonna be putting pressure on the wrong things. But we should be able to find a point right here. And we're gonna find a point right in here. I'll let this down. It's literally just putting the jack. You gotta get physical and get it where you want it. Got it right there by the kickstand in the front. On the rear, got it right there near the back, and there's the oil filter. So we're not gonna be putting pressure on that oil filter. Now this is gonna be a different situation because this bike falls over so far. But we're gonna start jacking it. And also, you wanna make sure that you're not too far forward this way with the jack, because you're not gonna have room on the other side for the bike. Once the bike levels out, if there's not any anything for the engine to sit on or the frame to sit on, it could, as soon as the bike levels up as you're jacking, it could fall over on the other side. So you need to make sure like you're not too far on this side. As we jack, see how it's falling over? If you look right there at that edge, you can see how much frame is sitting on that bar and also in the rear. But had we not left enough on this side and went too far on the other side, there's a possibility that it could have fallen on the opposite end once it was jacked up. From here, you just keep jacking. I'm gonna keep going till, so I'm on one of the safety sets now, so if I drop this, it's not going anywhere. So even if the hydraulics on this thing fail, it's not gonna go anywhere. Oh, I keep getting caught on that. Let's see. I mean, this is after some vigorous shaking. But you can take this a step further. These little hooks that are on the bottom here, you can actually put a ratcheting strap through here and catch this, and that'll hold the bike from rocking back and forth. But we got the weight pretty much balanced because, like I said, you want to put it right, at least the way I do it. You put it right by the kickstand, and the kickstand can still come up so you don't catch on it or anything. Especially when you start doing things like taking, on the Indian Chief, for instance, you got the frame rail that this is mounted to. and you have to take this off, and I think you have to do the same thing here to get the motor out. But you're gonna want this to come up, or to take it off at least, because if not, you won't be able to get the motor out. At least that's how I took it out. But the heaviest point on the bike is gonna be the motor, in I guess every single case. But on the M109R, for instance, the rear end tends to be about, well, I'm not gonna say it's about as heavy, but it's very heavy. So it tends to sag more in the rear than it does in the front. On this bike, it seems to be pretty balanced. So it does depend on the bike, but you still want this to be the center of the jack, because if not, you have a risk of it tipping over. But you can see, we got it. I mean, this is some pretty aggressive shaking. I don't even have the bike fully centered. It's kind of like crooked right now. So I'm gonna let this back down, and then we're gonna jack up the Indian Chief, because its jack point is very similar. Of course, it's a Polaris-based machine. Ooh, wait a minute. Do I have that kickstand down? Yes, I do. But before I put this back on the ground, I'm gonna put this kind of where I want it. I think it's gonna be right about here. All right. Okay, there we go. The difference with Indian Chief is that its kickstand is a little bit more far forward than Magnum. So we're gonna go in between the kickstand. The kickstand is a little bit more far forward here, so we don't have anywhere for that bar to sit in front of the kickstand. So we're gonna sit it behind it. And also you can see that we don't have an oil filter to deal with, unlike the Victory Magnum, because the oil filter is right here in the front with that mud on it. We're gonna pull the bike over a little bit so this slides completely under it. I'll leave a little bit of space on this edge for the frame to sit. Looking at how much space we got on the rear, you can see the edge of the bar right there, and on the front we got the edge of the bar. The edge of the bar is visible, and also the edge of the bar is visible on this side as well. Even though I got this thing pretty much secured, it's not level, and it's because I went a little too far forward. So what I can do is I can come back a little bit, but if you come back too far, then this frame rail starts to curve up. So there's not really much space that you have left to do this. So like I said, it really depends on the bike, but this thing's definitely not going anywhere. But of course, again, you got these little straps here, these areas that you can loop a ratchet strap through and hook in here. And then you can secure these down so this doesn't move. So there are other ways to secure it, but it's not going nowhere, trust me. Another difference you're gonna find here is that this kickstand is not gonna go up with this jack up under here, because this frame rail is mounted straight into the motor right here. Now you could move the jack a little bit more inward. I've done that before, to jack off of the motor and then put this frame rail on, or at least have a temporary solution while you're changing out this. But I have another device that holds the front wheel without this that allows me to make changes like this. This device has saved me multiple times with keeping the front wheel locked in and the bike upright, because it definitely allows you to change kickstands, and you don't need this to do it. So these devices go hand in hand, but they also serve different purposes, but it really just depends on what you're doing. These handlebars make this thing so awkward. All right. Oh, dear God. Yeah, that's not gonna work for me. Better. Yeah, so different bikes have different jack points. Polaris machines, they're typically, at least the big turn machines, they're right there by that kickstand. We can kind of put it more in the front, in between the kickstand, and kind of still get the kickstand up. I think the Chieftain is going to be very similar to the Chief, where you don't really have that access to flip that kickstand up because there's not much space in front of that kickstand, unlike the Victories. So you kind of just have to deal with that weird balancing because the bike's more front heavy with the front end on, and you got the motor, unlike the M109R where it has a drive shaft, that heavy 250 millimeter rear wheel in the back. It tends to want to float backwards more instead of the front like the Chief, because the Chief has more weight on the front and the motor. So it's just trial and error. You just kind of get under there and just jack the bike up in slow increments and just see kind of where the point is. But like I said, once you get it up, it's easy. Just make sure it doesn't tip over on either side. So that's how I do it. It's not the perfect solution. I love that I have a floor jack because I can kind of just roll that thing out of the way when it's done versus a full table lift in here, because you guys can see how I'm always moving stuff around in this space that seems large, but when you got bikes in here, it's like I want to be able to move stuff around more. So yeah, that's how I do it. Next up is working on that Victory Magnum more. It's time to start repairing some of those parts to figure out what we're going to do, and also working on the Super Chief. So definitely make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of that, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.